So, hello again, good afternoon. Hope the lunch was tasty and you are full of energy to listen to a couple of sessions. So, my name is Jane, and today we will talk about UI UX basics for iOS developers and how knowing these basics actually can help you to improve as a developer, on my humble opinion, and I hope that after the session you will share my view. So, a few words about me. I work at Nix, a global software engineering company. We work with worldwide clients and we help their businesses to grow and to transform through the top-notch technologies, no matter tech stack or complexity of the project. I'm in the industry, in mobile development industry for 8 years now. I've started as a developer. Right now, I'm more like a manager and a consultant. I'm mentoring guys and so on. But the programmer inside me still likes to do some code from time to time. And last but not least, I'm from Ukraine, the motherland of brave and strong-willed people, and I'm proud. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the support. So let's try from the actually finding out why do we need to know this design basics. So it all starts with user-centric thinking. Actually, I think we've all been there, and from time to time we start to think about the code at the first place, and we forgot that we actually write the code for the user. Of course, we need to keep this code neat and tidy, and eventually it leads to good experience for user because app performs better, faster, there is less bugs, and so on. But sometimes it has downsides because sometimes you can be so focused on making your code elegant, so you are ready to compromise on user experience to make like the perfect code. But it's a crucial mistake because you need to bear in mind that all you do is for user. Second thing, as actually user communicates with your app not through the code again, but through the design. And design has a really deep connection to people's brains and people react to the design in a positive way. So it's not just because I said so. These guys performed research that proved that aesthetically pleasing design is considered as something more usable. It's grounded. In a more broad way, if we think about design in a more broad way, it's not only about how the product looks, but also how it behaves. So it's UI plus UX. Or even sounds and feels, which is also considered as part of UX, actually. Okay, but you can say, I know it matters, but there is a designer, a UX expert, a business analyst to think of all these things and to be responsible for it. But the question here is, are they in your team? Because if you want to work on your own project, or you're trying yourself in a startup, or for example, you need to make fast POC for your customer, it's still an app, but a designer in team may not be in place. So in this case, you need to handle it somehow by yourself. So knowing design basics will come in handy here. But even if you're a full team and you collaborate with a lot of designers, you still need to know these basics to collaborate in a more effective way, to have this common ground. Knowing these things will let you to understand why your teammate came to one or another solution, why he draws such a design, and you will have more motivation to stick to details. Actually, you will be able to recognize these details while others cannot. So in terms of collaboration and in terms of making something by your own, it's really crucial to know some design basics. And good news here is that you don't need to be a talented, gifted artist to do so. Actually, well, we're not talking about creating something, unique and outstanding, but still, there is a set of rules behind the design, which all the designers use actually. And by knowing these rules, you can achieve these basics. So these rules are actually called UX laws. UX law is not something detailed, it's not a guide, it's more a general rule of thumb. And actually it can be interpreted in different ways, depending on the context. So today, next, I guess, half an hour, we will talk about how some of these laws, because actually we don't have time to cover all of them, just my favorite ones. So we will speak about how these laws can be applied to your daily routine and how you can apply them as an iOS developer. The first law will be about consistency and standards. Actually, each person has its own, behavioral patterns, and people love standards, and they have some expectations. For example, when you enter the hotel, you expect that it will be check-in desk near the entrance, and it meets your expectation. If you find that there is a kitchen out there, I think you will be surprised, and it will increase your cognitive load. You will be thinking, oh my God, what is going on? The same applies actually to digital products as well. So that's what Jacob's law is about. It claims that people use products that are made not by you, by others, majority of time. And this experience actually creates user expectations. And if you fail to meet these expectations, you will fail to engage your user. User will be frustrated. So how to apply this law? Actually, by knowing your platform standards. I think all of you as iOS developers at least one time heard about human interface guidelines, which is a comprehensive guide on every UI, native UI component, every technology that is in iOS SDK, and about ways and approaches how to work with them and how not to work with them, actually. So when I mentor interns, I give them these documents and as a starting point, to get acquainted with the system. Because it's the most, I guess, comprehensive guide of what the platform is, how user does feel this platform actually. And now when I'm working with some new technology to me, I mean native framework, there is a corresponding, for sure, there is a corresponding section in human interface guidelines. And I open and read it because it works every time. So let's see an example. It's a native health app and it's a profile in health app. When you tap an element to pick some values, app opens date picker. Well, pretty, it's what user expects because the date picker is a standard and it is in iOS, I don't know, maybe since the first version even. I didn't have iPhone that time, so I'm not sure, but it's a standard, no doubt. If we look at the same flow on Android, you will see another type of control. But actually, this control is a standard for Android users. But there is a surprise in human interface guidelines if we will want to see what does they say about date picker. So date picker is still in the iOS. You still need to, use it when you have long or medium list of items. But Apple says that in such a case, when you have limited items, you'd better use another control, which appeared in iOS since version 14. So what is the conclusion? Well, the first conclusion is that maybe Apple should update Health app someday to comply with their guides. But the more, important conclusion here is that, of course, there are standards, but there is always room to improve, and there is always room for evolution. And that's why actually Apple and Android are learning from each other. And if you see this new, to some extent, control in iOS, it reminds us Android more than date picker that was standard before. And it's not the only case. Actually, Android applies to its platform some approaches from iOS as well. So it works in both ways. And it's a kind of a trend. But not only Apple and Google are, opinion leaders in this field. You all remember Tinder and this swipe element that became a classic, a standard. They even have a patent to it, so you need to pay if you want to use such type of control in your app. But the interesting thing here is that why actually it became so viral? Why people like it? Why it works? Because it is a metaphor. It's also one of the statements in human interface guidelines. So virtual objects and actions, they work better if they are familiar for a user from the real world. And this control in Tinder is a metaphor to a stack of cards. So that's why it speaks the user's language. It's so intuitive. Well, we are speaking about standards and rules here, but I need to tell you one thing, that actually it's all good, but it's not a math, it's not a physics, and you need to know that it's okay to think, out of the box, to break rules sometimes if you want to create something unique and valuable for your user. But thing here is that you need to be super conscious about why are you doing it and what value it will bring to your user, to your app, because it's a tricky part. So to be on a safe side, it's better to stick to standards. Yeah. Next law we'll be talking about, and next actually section, is about layout. Why? Because when I asked my designer friend which common mistakes developers do a lot, she said that they are misusing layouts and specifically paddings and blank spaces, because this stuff is there for a reason. It's not about beauty, it's not because designer kind of sees so. There is a reason behind it, but a lot of developers, don't see the difference between 40 points padding or 20 points padding, just because maybe they don't know why it matters. So let's find out. It's explained by the law of proximity. Actually, our brain works in such a way that the more close elements are to each other, the more the user tends to perceive them as connected ones. So this spacing stuff helps user to organize and to react quickly. I hope you all see this example. So on the left screenshot, there are problems with layout because, for example, you don't know for sure this description under the what's new. Does it relate to what? To what's new or more for previews? So you need time to figure out. While on the right screenshot, everything is so intuitive, so you don't put any effort to understand what is going on the screen. As well as this left offset of what's new. Actually, it violates the common line of alignment of elements. Alignments also serves to to make more faster scanning of the screen by user. So by making such type of mistakes, just because you know it's more convenient for you in terms of the code, actually impacts user experience in a bad way. I want to mention two more laws, which is complementary to law of proximity. They say that if elements are organized in such a way that they are in the common region that is framed, for example, or they have some visual connection. They also tend to be perceived as a group. But sometimes, all these colors, frames, shadows, alignment are just these details can be skipped by a developer. So developer can think that it's not something that matters. It's just for the beauty, but it's not so easy for me to implement, for example. I don't know, or I don't have a time for it. So I will do just a list. But actually, for user, it will be much easier to navigate through app if it will be like on a screenshot that is on the right. Well, next law is a Hick's law. It claims that the more options user has, the harder it is to make a decision for him. I think you all experienced it I don't know, for example, online shopping. In case you have 2 options, it's super easy. But when it's so many options, you feel frustrated even. So I think that this law can be also applied not only on mobile design actually, but for me it has a connotation with single responsibility principle from Solid, because breaking this complex stuff on chunks of code, each part of which will be dedicated to some specific goal, is actually something that we need in our do in our daily routine. So the same applies to design actually. And the most bright example, I guess, of applying this law is breaking this long and cluttered forms into steps. Because sure, you can make long form and make users scroll in it, but there is a chance that user will refuse doing it at some step. So look at the right example. It's project creating flow at Slack. And actually, it has step. Each step is dedicated to some goal. So name your project, ask your colleagues to join, and so on. And in case you want to add one more step, for example, to give access to contacts of the user, you don't need to change other steps a lot. You just add it and that's it. And that's how it works in your code when you implement single responsibility principle. So again. Actually, if you add this specific step for context access, you will have more possibility that user will approve it, because user will be focused, user will understand why do you need this context, and you will be able to speak to user in a more effective way. Another good example is onboarding and tutorials. So you can have a big comprehensive guide that explains everything in your application, but let's be honest, who will be reading this guide when they just trying to understand what your app is about? So the first thing you should think of is onboarding, it is shown on the second screen. It's Evernote, so it's way more effective and way more engaging for user to see such kind of onboardings rather than read something a lot. And another way to help your user is actually to provide contextual help and educate in the context, like Slack does. The third screenshot is the screen actually which user sees after creating a new space. So here Slack gives us some clues on what to do next, add team weights, so on. So this is relevant suggestion in the context. But I want to mention here that actually providing this contextual, well-designed, adaptive help for user is, not something that can be done like this. It costs, and not every app needs such thing. So think of user-friendly design first of all, and not every app needs something more complicated and sophisticated. Next law, which is also tends to be violated by developers a lot, as my designer colleagues are saying, who perform design reviews, unfortunately, but I think we'll go through it. So the human eye tends to perceive similar elements like a group, or perceive elements that share the same maybe functionality if they have common visual elements like color, shape, and so on, even if these elements are not coupled together, even if they are in different parts of the screen. So if your interface has, on one screen, for example, you had a green button, which is interactive, it means next time user sees button that looks like this, he will also expect this button to be, or element, to be interactive. And if you fail to do so, your user will be frustrated. So, and actually, example on the left, it is made up because Airbnb doesn't do so, but actually in other apps, I see this frequently. I mean, when interactable and not active elements are sharing the same color, and this is what can be misunderstood by users. And in terms of developer mistakes here, actually sometimes developer just not too attentive or a bit lazy, or it's, I don't know, whatever, and then it leads to the thing that designer idea is not implemented, fully implemented. And in best case scenario, it's just a bug. Okay, you can live with it. But in a worst case scenario, it will frustrate your user and have bad impact on his or her experience. So we were talking about interactive elements a lot today. And when we talk about it, we cannot, we need to mention tab zones. Actually, the rule you see on the screen is not something you can break, because it is really crucial. This is a requirement. So your controls need to be big enough to offer user normal experience, to offer user ability to tap on them. But while, I don't know, who knows this rule, guys? Can you please raise your hands? So a lot of people know, but actually even it can be considered as something obvious. I see that even designers forget sometimes about this rule. So the left screenshot is a Pinterest. And look, please, they have this, I'm not sure if it's visible, but okay, I'll explain. The terms of services and privacy policy links are too close to each other, so that it's bearable, it's tappable, but still it may be for some users hard to tap on the right link from the first time. And also, these links are situated too near the safe area, which is also actually a crucial mistake here. And if you see the right screenshot, there is a better way to organize the things, actually. Well, as the users, we use our mobile phones in really different conditions. I mean, on the go, or even running, holding it in one hand while holding some other things in another hand. At noon, when, I don't know, sunshine blinds you, and so on. I'm not even talking about some dangerous conditions in which you can also use your phone. So most likely you will hold it by one hand, and you will tap buttons by your thumb. So thumb is main character here. So on this scheme, you see some zones that are accessible by this one finger, and some zones that are, hard to access not using your second hand. And while this scheme is not universal, because actually each app may have its own peculiarities of usage, and something should be investigated actually, but this scheme explains a lot. For example, many applications, they place main action buttons near to the bottom of the screen so that user can easily tap them, while placing some elements that are not used so frequently, or maybe some destructive actions in the zones that are hardly accessible to, eliminate misstep case. But one thing to mention here is that just placing these destructive elements near to the upper corner doesn't mean that you've solved the problem and the full problem, because the good design, actually, it's the design that prevents user from making mistakes. So please don't forget, it's not, it can be not provided by your designer explicitly, but please keep it always in mind that you need to cover these destructive actions by explicit request to the user. So are you sure you want to delete something? It's really important. The next thing we will talk about is accessibility. So I've already mentioned that there are a lot of conditions in which applications are used. And accessibility is an approach, a way of thinking to help users to use your app, to interact with the interface, regardless of their capabilities. So it's not only about people with disabilities, it's actually about each of us. Because sometimes we also are in such a condition that we are limited somehow. So as I said, accessibility is, the way of thinking, more like a vector. It's not a detailed guide, as UX laws as well. And it can be classified in different ways. It's just a few options here. So accessibility can be classified by limitation duration, which user experiences. I mean, someone can have permanent limitation, but there are users who are just in a crowd, and in a noisy place. It's also a limitation, but temporary. Also, it can be classified by limitation type. I mean, vision limitation or hearing, and so on. And also, it can be differentiated by coverage. So you may think of and handle just main cases, and on the other hand, you can think of corner cases and rare cases by implementing accessibility in your app. So it's not a checklist, it's more a process. So I'm not sure that I have enough knowledge to speak a lot about accessibility, and actually it's a separate topic. We don't have a lot of time today to do it, but I want to cover some iOS SDK abilities that comes out of the box, and it's not hard to implement them in your app, but they will have really good impact on how accessible your app is. And the first thing is dynamic type. Actually, it's, let's say, technology approach in which user selects how big text he wants to see in your app, and user can do it through system settings. So actually, you will not, while implementing this dynamic type in your app, you won't set specific font size to elements in your design, but you will apply styles to them, like header, caption, body, and so on. Some of these styles actually are already in iOS SDK. They use this San Francisco typeface. But you can create your own using your custom fonts and custom sizes and weight of lines. So actually, human interface guidelines have the separate, pretty long page that describes all the details about how to implement dynamic type in your app, and I suggest you to see all these things. But today we will cover like 3 of them, which I consider the most maybe important. The first thing is that you need to think of layout while your font is scaling. So in case you have, for example, 2 columns and font is becoming bigger and bigger, it means that this horizontal space that text elements have, it will be limited, actually. And at some point, you need to reconsider layout on the screen, like it happens here in Mail app. You can see that date of the email moved to the bottom, and there is now no 2 columns. It's just 1 column. So, and you don't need to truncate a lot text, because in case it was on the right, user will see not really legible text. The second thing is that you need to always check if the custom font is readable at small sizes. Despite the fact that Apple claims that in most cases you should use standard typeface, I mean San Francisco. So despite this fact, designers like to use custom fonts to make some, I don't know, something outstanding. And the thing here is to double check if this custom font is readable and legible in these small sizes, if you want to implement dynamic type. And the third thing is, which you also can see here, is that while you are scaling your text, important icons should be scaled too, because actually user needs to see them as well. And it could be easily achieved by using SF symbols. It's a native package that contains more than 3,000 icons, which are highly configurable. You can find actually, I think for any event on your app, you can find icons there, and then you can configure it in a way you want. I mean, scale, weight of lines, color of each part of this symbol. So, of course, I think like designers will draw something that is not so standard, but in case you, for example, doing your pet project, it's no need to Google for third-party icons. You can use the subsymbols if you want. They are consistent with the system. And the benefit here is also in terms of accessibility is that they grow with the text. So you can apply font texts to them as well. Actually, adding icons near the text itself also can have a good impact on the accessibility of your app, because it will help people, for example, with the color blindness or with some not permanent visual disabilities to understand better what is going on. One thing here about color is that you need to care about contrast when you implement color. And there is even a specific rate of contrast that you need to handle, bare minimum. I don't remember the exact number, but it can be easily found in human interface guidelines. And it is needed to make interface more comprehensible for user. And actually here, by the analogy with with text styles, you also shouldn't name your colors like red color or something like this anymore. Because actually, if you think of accessibility, you will definitely apply such modes and implement such modes as inverted colors and mode for increased contrast. So actually, behind one color, there are 4 colors, up to 4 colors in this case. So Apple suggests using semantic color names. So rather than calling your color like red, you should think of something about large button color. So of course, we all have our own approaches how to handle color palette in our apps, but this is simple and basic suggestion by Apple. And the last law we will talk about is Doherty's threshold. It is about how feedback matters for users. So it is crucial. Users need to have a feedback because they need a confirmation of their actions, and they need to know the state of the system they are using actually. And crucial feedbacks in your app, and I'm sure that you implemented it for a lot of times, are loading and error messages. So firstly, we will talk about loadings. Actually, adding some animation or even better progress bar while you are loading some content is a good thing already. It is a feedback already, and it makes this time that user waits for content bearable, let's say. So people are engaged while they are seeing this animation. But it's not enough to provide good experience. So let's talk about some more things here. The first thing is that users tend to make mistakes. And if user came to screen accidentally, just by misstepping some element, and you are trying to load the content for the screen, and this loading animation is blocking all other elements, your user feels like he's stuck on the screen and he needs to wait for a long time before having ability to escape this screen. So provide emergency exit for your user whenever, no matter what. So no blocking HUDs, I beg you. Next thing is that show content, the faster, the better. In case you have part of loaded content, show it. Next part will be loaded and you will show it afterwards. So you can break it on the steps and it's totally fine. Also, one more strategy is to show, to mimic content which is loading, like it's done on Slack. So this skeleton views can also improve user comprehension of your design. Error messages. Actually, they are considered to be, errors, considered to be something bad, but they happen and it's alive. And providing user with gracefully handled error, by gracefully handling this event, you actually do a lot for user experience. So let's talk about do's and don'ts here. First thing, you should be as simple as you can. If you will use a lot of text, or you will use a jargon or some error codes, unless your users are developers, your user won't understand what is happening to the system. What do you want from him? So keep it simple. Also, you need to be super clear of what is going on. So being simple in terms of showing your users that something went wrong is also not a good approach here, because you need to show what exactly went wrong. Then you need to suggest your user with next steps, so how user can escape this situation, what user can do to resolve this issue. And also do it in a context. Like with an example with validation, if there is a typo in specific field, you should show the error message near the specific field, not just, a pop-up message. Next, and the last thing here is that please don't make your user to confirm that he's seen this error all the time, unless it's something, super crucial, because it irritates a lot. Well, I think it's time for making conclusions. I've tried to, to explain you at least some of UX laws today, and give you a clue how they can be applied to your daily routine, to apps you develop. Of course, we didn't have time to talk about all of them, but I hope it will be a good starting point. So I encourage you to proceed, actually. And one more thing here is that I think that these UX laws can be applied not only to design, to work, but actually to your life as well. So famous Pareto principle is also a UX law, and it is used everywhere, in culture, in business, anywhere. So design, actually, it's not only about, I don't know, how your app looks or something looks. It's also about way of thinking. It's how our world works. So please take a moment and scan the QR code. You will find useful links. Well, in my opinion, they're useful. So you can find there more materials to find out more things about UX laws and usability heuristics that we've talked about today. Also, there are some articles about user-centric thinking and some games for developers to develop design vision. So take a moment to scan it. If you didn't do it, I will go out of the screen in a moment. So guys, before we will move to Q&A section, I want to ask you for like up to 3 minutes of your attention, because I actually have a topic, this is tough part, sorry. I have a topic that is, you know, more than important to me and to my country, the country I was born in, and the country I live in, Ukraine. 24th of February, I woke up because my friend called me. She told me that it's happening, we are bombed. I was petrified, actually. And then I took my cat, a backpack, and moved out of my apartment, not knowing where I'm going and if I would ever come back, actually. We all were thinking that it's not possible. It's not just possible in 21st century, in the center of Europe, that Putin and Russian army is bombing our schools, our homes, our hospitals, but it is what's happening. I was born in Mariupol, which is now completely devastated by Russian army. My parents lived there. My husband, which I consider to be a hero, actually, he was able to rescue them. But before that, for a month, I didn't hear anything from them, and I didn't even know if they are alive, because everything was devastated and destroyed. All the infrastructure was destroyed. I didn't have cellular connection with them. They didn't have water supply, heating. It was February, so it was like winter. It was cold in Ukraine. So no water, no heating, no food and medicine even, because Russians were blocking humanitarian aids, and there was no ability to evacuate people from there. A week ago, when I tried to finalize my presentation, I saw pictures from Bucha and Irpin, which are cities near the Kiev, and they were occupied by Russians. Then our army freed the cities, and the world has, if you didn't see this picture, they are heartbreaking, but you need to see it to understand what is happening to like my country and people who live in it, because a lot of, you know, it's a disaster. It's not war, it's a genocide, because a lot of women were raped, children were raped, people were tortured, and the list is unfortunately long. So the thing I want to say is that I'm here just thanks to our defenders, and we all are, you know, swift heroes here. So let's unite and support Ukrainian heroes to win and to defend our country. By this QR code, you can find links to official ways to help Ukraine. And I ask you for support, because Ukrainians are brave, Ukrainians are strong, but still we need support from the world. So please support us in any way you can. I mean, spreading the truth, helping to refugees, I don't know, blocking and making the DOS attacks to Russian sites, making donations, speaking to your government. So any way is important to us. I actually also want to thank Swift Heroes organizers who made a donation on behalf of each participant to support Ukrainian refugees. Please, let's. So, thank you. This help is really important to us. So I ask you to stand with Ukraine, because together we will win. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. And I think the applause is not for us. The applause is not for Swift Heroes. Let's give an applause to Jane and show our solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are you happy to take questions?
Yeah, we can move to Q&A section.
All right,
yeah.
Thank you. So I think we do have some questions. Steph? All right.
Yeah.
And again, if you guys have any questions, you can go to the microphone.
I don't have free T-shirts, but ask me, please, anything you want.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for being here, actually.
Thank you for letting me be here.
So online they're actually thanking you for the excellent presentation, and you're also getting, of course, a lot of support and a lot of yellow and blue hearts for you. Okay, first question is from me. It's a kind of technical one. You were discussing before about dynamic sizing, and
sorry, can you please repeat?
Dynamic size for the text. Okay. And what I always find difficult in my designs is to adapt the dynamic size to cells in collection views and recyclable stuff. How do you deal that in your work? I mean,
well, actually, it really depends on the case, and I think definitely something should be discussed with your designer, because there is no silver bullet here. Sometimes you need to reconsider layout. Sometimes you need to prioritize content, so maybe some labels are not so important to use, or you can just skip it, you can hide it, and focus on something that really matters, in terms of the content. So it really depends.
Yeah, also, it's a stuff that happens, for instance, in cards like this. Sometimes we get the design already finalized, and we have no way to interact with the team who designed this, because usually in our work it's outside in the South team.
Yeah.
It's really a mess. And speaking about designs, what are your recommendations about tooling for design? I mean, Figma, Sketch, Zeppelin. Okay. What do you suggest about
yeah, actually in our team the default option to collaboration with designers is Zeppelin, but sometimes we use InVision, for example, and it's also okay, because in both of these tools you can inspect colors of elements, size of elements, corner radius, and so on. Also the paddings with elements, so actually whatever is okay for you, but Zeppelin is totally fine, we use it, and we don't find some crucial issues with it. In terms of actually drawing the design, I know that our designers use Sketch and Figma. Actually, this presentation was done in Figma by my designer friend, Edward. Thanks to you, Edward. So, yeah.
Okay, and are you also planning some talks like that for designers from a developer point of view? One thing above all the others, cutting out exportable images. They're always in the wrong in the wrong slices.
Yeah. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just double check the questions. I mean, they support for Figma actually from someone, and okay. I guess we're fine with questions. So again, thank you so much.
Okay. Another big round of applause for Jane, I think.
Thank you very much.